Right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday. Anything new and exciting? Boring? Oh,
I still haven't found my Halloween costume.
still haven't found your Halloween costume. What can Eunice do for Halloween that would be easy? Easy. Hmm.
I'll probably just buy ears or something. I don't know where.
Yeah. Ears or horns
Yeah.
or a tail or something. Good morning, Peter. Well, I don't know. I'll be dressing up. I'm gonna have fun with this.
As
You'll see, I guess.
okay.
Yeah. I don't want to give away the surprise. That's part of the fun of Halloween is seeing how people are dressed. So don't want to spoil the surprise. Okay, so Adon is here. Good morning, Adon. Jesse's here. Good morning, Jesse. Alicia is here. Good morning, Alicia. And Zartaj is here. Good morning, Zartaj. Okay, so, oh yes, right. So, we were talking yesterday. We were watching a little bit of that documentary, but before that, we were talking about kind of the inequality between men and women, right? And so, to sort of understand where that came from, we watched that TED Talk by Christopher Ryan, and he he made a couple of arguments, right? One that humans were kind of biologically promiscuous animals. We're not biologically monogamous animals, and most cultures have monogamous relationships and monogamous marriages. Monogamy is one person, right? Most cultures have that, but he says that's a choice, right? That's not a biological thing, it's a cultural thing, right? So that's kind of one thing he was arguing. But the second thing he was suggesting was the the inequality between men and women actually isn't a biological thing. It's not really doesn't go back to the beginnings of our species. It actually only goes back to the beginnings of agriculture, right? And we walked through the idea of kind of land ownership, passing down land from fathers to sons, and the idea that the only way you can make sure that your son is yours is by controlling the sexuality of your wife, right? And to some degree, the sexuality of men too, although I think we all instinctively know that men's sexual behavior is less controlled than women's, right? Although again, in some societies, their sexual behavior is tightly controlled as well. And so, because of that, we see a pretty strong inequality between men and women, and we also see, um, again, a lot of kind of negative ideas around women's sexual behavior, right? And so, again, even though, in Canadian culture here, we've moved on from, an agricultural background. Inheritance is, you can leave your wealth to whoever you want. It doesn't necessarily have to go to your sons, right? Most people split it between their kids evenly. Sometimes it goes to charities. You can do whatever you want, right? Whatever you write in your will, that's what happens. Um, so we're not really too concerned about agriculture or inheritance at this point in history. And of course, figuring out who the parent of a child is not super difficult either, right? It's just a simple DNA test. But even so, we still have these kind of leftover ideas about sexual behavior, right? About how some things are okay for men, depending on culture you come from, and certain things are not okay for women, right? And then we kind of moved on to this idea of what's kind of standing in the way of changing this. And so we were watching this documentary on yesterday. We met four young women, right, from different countries. Who did we meet? Remind me.
Shoo shoo.
Shui Shui, yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Although, yeah, it's spelled differently, but yeah, and she's from.
Oh, forgot that.
Yeah, she's from. Anybody?
I remember the one from Jordan. Mira or something?
Right, so there's Mira from Jordan, there's Shway Shway from Lesotho, there's, Zartaj says there's Lulu, and Lulu is from UK? Yeah, yeah, she's from London. And then, yeah, Mira from Jordan, Lulu from UK. And then there is Vigdis, right? And Vigdis is from
Iceland.
Iceland. Good. So we've got 4 young women kind of talking about their experiences being a young woman in their society, right? And the narrator here, I think his name is Jonathan, but don't quote me, I've forgotten. Jonathan has gone to countries with kind of different levels of inequality between men and women, right? And so they said Iceland is kind of near the top, right? So international measures of equality between men and women, things are as equal as they get on planet Earth in Iceland, and then Jordan is much less equal, and then the other countries are somewhere in the middle, right? So he's kind of chosen countries from across the spectrum in terms of equality between men and women. Do you remember some of the things that we've heard from some of these young women? Kind of, what have they told us? Let's start with Vigdis. What had she talked about?
It's safe to walk alone home at night.
Mm. Right? So her and her friends have, I guess, maybe more freedom than girls in other parts of the world might.
Because it's a safer country.
Yeah, in part, right? And a safer country for women as well, right? So it's safer, but also safer for women. And one of the young girls, Vigdis's friend, she said she was recently in New York, and she wanted to walk around Central Park, and they're like, "Oh no, you can't walk around there after dark," right? And she thought that was, oh, that's strange, right? Because at home she can walk around in the dark all the time, right? So, okay, so we were hearing from Vigdis on that. What else did we hear? Yeah, what was Shui Shui telling us?
Like the inequality is like very high. It's high, I guess, between like men and women, and women are not allowed to do things like rules is more strict, I guess, for women.
Oh yeah, she was.
You can't put out something.
She can't what?
Put out something.
Oh yeah, she kind of felt. Yeah, she felt that like boys were kind of always talking and were encouraged to speak up, but she felt like she felt it was more difficult for her to do that, right? It was more, it was kind of less acceptable for her to be loud, right, or to speak her mind or give her opinion, right? She was kind of being, encouraged to just keep quiet, right, while the boys were making noise and saying whatever they wanted, right? And her friend was saying something too. Shui Shui's friend was saying something. Had something to do with parents.
I forgot that one.
I think that was what she was saying. You can't put our opinion in front of them.
Oh, okay. That was in front of parents. Yeah. So so the idea of expressing your opinion and speaking up, but also, I think her friend felt that disobeying the parents was worse if you were a girl, right? It was almost like it was expected if you were a boy, right? That you would, push back against your parents' authority and you'd, disagree with them, but to do the same thing, as a girl, that's like, oh, that's not good, right? What was Mira saying? Mira from Jordan. And her friends, of course.
Men are like more free.
Right? She was expressing that men are more free, right? She's kind of comparing her life with that of her brother Saad, right? And we met him playing basketball. Yeah, what other kinds of things did she say?
Oh, is it like men are allowed to do sports and women aren't really.
She seemed to give that impression. Yes. Yeah, she seemed to give that impression. What else did she say?
No dating. Like the parents are still strict on that for the daughters.
Right. So there, she said her parents. Well, I guess the girls' parents were kind of not supportive of them dating at that age, right? And they were. Was she 15 or 16? She was 15, right?
Can't remember.
I think she was. I think she's 15, and her friends, I guess, are the same. What else? Did she say anything else, Mira? Basketball.
Can't go out alone. Something.
Right. Yeah. She's kind of not allowed to go out. She's not allowed to go out alone, and yeah, whereas men are. Zartaj says here. He says, yeah, Mira's brother seems to be able to break the rules, right? So Mira's brother lives at home. There are rules, but he seems to disobey them and just live his life. And he didn't seem too worried about it either, right? They're like, oh, you break the rules? He's like, aha, yeah, I break the rules. he didn't seem too concerned about the fact that he was breaking the rules, but it seemed like Mira seemed like she had to follow more rules, or she had to follow them all the time, or something like that, right? Although I'm not contradicting what Mira says here, but also keep in mind that Saad's 21, right? And Mira's 15. So those are different ages, right? That's a big difference between them. So there's probably a gender thing going on here, but there's also an age thing.
Same like me and my brother.
Yeah. How old's your brother?
He's like nearly 4 years older, so
Oh, okay. Yeah.
nearly 20.
Yeah.
Nearly 20.
And that's a bit of a difference, right? Okay, and what did we hear from Lulu? And I'll admit Lulu's and her friends are the toughest to understand, which is funny because the UK is like the only, that's the only country here where English is like the primary language, and yet I'm having trouble understanding Lulu. But did you remember anything that Lulu mentioned? No? It's tough to hear what she's saying. Like there's a lot of her accent is kind of in the way, and she's speaking really fast, and it's difficult to understand what she's saying. What did she talk about? Oh yeah, she was kind of talking about exactly what we were talking about in terms of women's behavior, right? So if women have a lot of sexual partners, they get labeled with a lot of negative terms, right? And Lulu and her friends were kind of, I guess, frustrated because guys would talk to them about sex and sexual behavior, and if these girls admitted that they hadn't had sex with anyone, that they were virgins, if they admitted that, it was like, oh well, don't you think it's time? Like you're already 16, shouldn't you be having sex by now, right? So they were kind of like getting pressure for not doing it. But then she said if you are having sex and people kind of know that, then you get labeled with one of those labels that we talked about, right? So there's no winning for these girls, right? If you're not having sex, it's like, oh well, what's wrong with you? You're already 16, like, why aren't you doing this? Like, well, what, are you weird, right? And then, but if they do it, then they get labeled with all sorts of negative terms, right? So they kind of, again, they can't win, right? You can't. People will say negative things about whether you're engaging in sexual activity or not, right? And again, it's not really anyone's business, really, but it's high school, right?
Everything you do is like wrong.
Yeah.
If you do this, it's wrong. If you do this, it's wrong.
Yeah. Say that again. It's not just about the girls, but
People say things
true, right? Is that people, people often kind of gossip about other people and talk about who's doing what and who's not doing what, and kind of judging people a little bit, or just talking about people to talk about them. Yeah, and that's certainly true, right? But in this particular instance, yeah, it has to do with the sort of sexual behavior of these girls, right? And again, they can't really win here, right?
In my country, it's usually the nosy aunties who gossip about everything.
Oh, right. Those nosy aunties. Don't they have anything better to do?
Aunties who stick their nose in other people's business.
Don't they
and
have
nothing to do with it.
Don't they have anything better to do? Don't they have their own lives to live?
And they're so quick to judge, like,
Tisk,
yeah.
tisk, tisk. Nosy aunties. What are we gonna do, hey? Before we continue on, did anyone? Did anyone? Did you have a reaction to what any of these girls were saying? Like, was anything they said was like, oh yeah, I feel that that's true, or that's true for me, or did you have the opposite reaction? Did you say, oh, I don't agree with that, or that's not my experience, or
Somehow relatable.
somehow relatable?
To the girls who aren't allowed to, like, who have more restrictions.
Okay.
Because I'm the only, like, I'm the youngest.
Right. So there's the yeah, so there's kind of there's an age thing that has to do with it, right? But gender as well. What is girls in our society are seen by aunties. So nosy.
If one thing happens, one auntie, they have group chats, right? Like on WhatsApp
Oh.
or something. One auntie says something, the others are like, hey, really? And like they start
It's like
gossiping.
it's like a spy network.
Yeah.
It's like the KGB. They're tapping phones, and they've got eyes everywhere.
My mom is one of those aunties.
Is she?
Yeah.
My mom calls them news reporters. She like the only thing they have to do is report to each other. This way the business does.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
They know everything.
Do they?
Yeah.
A lot.
Oh boy. You see, I don't know that we really that's kind of I guess an aspect of society or culture that I don't feel like we have in Canada. We don't kind of have that, although people do, people talk about other people all the time, but yeah, like to have like these kind of group of women who are always
Stereotyping aunties.
yeah, like I don't think we really have that, at least in kind of Western Canadian culture anyway. Good morning. We kind of don't have that. It's kind of seems kind of funny, but also like
I think it's different with like Western and Asian countries.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything else that you responded to from what the girls were saying in terms of yes, I agree, or no, I don't?
Very rarely.
Very relatable? Yeah. Dunya, yay, nay, yes, no? Um, I think they'll show us some city views later on. I think it's Amman, but yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people smoke in the city. Like, if you see, like,
Yeah.
women smoke more than, like, men.
Yeah.
So it's like a big deal. Like,
Interesting.
and then you made it a big deal for her.
Yeah.
And he started, like, asking her other questions that she could just, I don't know, like, it was kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was kind of pushing you a little bit on that, but I did because I have had students from Syria watch this before,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Yeah, that's not the way it is." Yeah,
I don't know why they like chose that part of that scene and they showed Sharia.
yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And I'd like to talk about that a little bit later because we'll hear more from Mira going forward, and so I would like to talk about why we're hearing what we're hearing, right? Like if you and other students are looking at what Mira is saying and saying, well, that's kind of not how it is.
I think it's maybe true,
Yeah.
but it's not that big deal because the rules with the guys that like they can't have sex too.
They can't what?
They can't
Oh,
they can't.
yeah.
Even if you go with the guy and the husband, they'll do like other things. You can't have that. Like there's a lot of rules that are strict with the guys too, and then for the girls too. But it's like they're a little bit strict on the girls, but it's still her choice. If
Yeah.
she wants, she can just move up.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal.
And again, you know, that it's worth pointing out that, you know, there is an age thing here as well, right? Like if Mira was my daughter and she was 15, yeah, I would want to know who she's hanging out with, right? I would want to know, yeah, I would want to know if she wants to date, right? And maybe, you know, maybe she's ready to, maybe she's not, I don't know, but I think I'd like to know about that, right? When she says, "Oh, I would smoke," I would say, "Not my house." Like when you're 15 years old, you're not smoking in my house. Like that's not happening, and that's not a cultural. Well, maybe it is a cultural thing, but that's an age thing as well, right? So, you know, yeah, this is the thing, right? Is that there's a little bit of gender issue going on here that we can talk about, but there's also an age thing, right? And these girls are still
You'll
they're
die early.
what's that?
You'll die early.
If you smoke
Yeah.
or
Yeah, if you smoke, and doesn't it like decreases the age?
oh, it does a lot of bad things. Yeah, it's like it's pretty much the worst thing you can do for your health is smoke. That's yeah, it's really bad. So yeah, and we can. I wouldn't mind coming back to that point later about why we hear what we're hearing from Mira. But is there anything else you want to kind of talk about in terms of what these girls are saying before we jump back in? No? No? Okay. So we'll hear a little bit more. Let's see. Let's watch 25 minutes. So from so we're going to watch from 15 minutes. What's 15 and 25? 40? Is my math right?
No, don't ask me. I failed
Okay.
math too.
Yeah, but this is just simple addition. Eunice. we should be able to do this between the two of us. Okay, so we'll watch from 15 to about 40 minutes, right? So that's about 25 minutes. Then we'll take a break and we'll come back and talk about a little more about what we've seen. Okay, so online people, the link and the questions are Microsoft Teams as usual, and I'll see you in just a little bit. Okay, so enjoy. kind of just let it ride until the end because we only had a few minutes left, so it didn't make sense to stop it with 3 minutes to go or 4 minutes to go or whatever. But let's talk about some other things that we heard from some of these girls. Who do you want to start with? Mira? Okay, let's start with Mira. So what else did we hear from Mira?
It's not from her, but it's from her dad. I think her dad is the like conservative, traditional man, I guess.
Yeah, he's kind of presented himself as conservative, right? Because he said he doesn't really want his daughter to hang around with people who are too liberal, right? And again, I don't know quite what he means by liberal, but he seems to be a little more conservative, a little more traditional, right? So he's expressed that. What else did we hear?
So he means like if she hangs out with someone, he wants to know like she's a good person or not.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah,
It doesn't mean that she can just be like this.
yeah,
He means like my friend was like I don't want to know everything about this girl. It's just that I want to know she's a good person to talk to.
yeah. Yeah, and so he says, yeah, if his daughter's hanging out with, with friends or with other people, he'd like to know who they are, right? Say again?
Don't hang out with this stranger.
Yeah, don't hang. Yeah, and that's that's a reasonable thing, right? Parents do want to know who their kids are hanging out with, and to make sure, that their kids are safe and they're not kind of exposed to bad influences, right? Because, yeah. What else do we hear from either Mira or from her father Marwan? They're playing backgammon, I think, and talking about marriage. Yeah. What is the conversation? How does the conversation go?
He says if he doesn't like the guy, he will not like him. He will not support him.
Yeah. What do you think that means?
That he won't give money for marriage, that he won't support it. I mean, if he doesn't like the person, then she's on herself. Then she's responsible.
Okay, so the idea that if she wants to marry someone who maybe he doesn't like, maybe he won't financially support her, maybe. No?
She's responsible for herself. She's gonna tell her whatever, and then she's not gonna like go with her step by step because it's her choice.
Hmm. Yeah, it's tough to know, right? Because, at least from my perspective, I'm not from their culture, and so, from my perspective, he's being a little bit vague, right? He's saying, "Oh, I would not support you," and I'm like, "Okay, well, what does that mean, right? Does it mean financially? Does it mean he'll simply say, "Look, I don't agree with this, but this is your decision. Do what you want. Good luck." Like, it's hard to know exactly what he means, right? What would you do? Like, maybe this is a difficult thing to imagine for you, or maybe it's not. I don't know. But if you had a daughter, and they were, or a son, but let's just say a daughter in this case, and they were going to marry someone that you just thought was no good, sketchy, right? Very sketchy. And so what would you do? There's movies based on this premise, right? But what would you do?
I'll tell her to think it over,
Think it over?
give it some time, and
Yeah.
consider everything
Oh, but mom,
before deciding.
but your mom. Oh, but mom, I love him so much. He's so great. I just want to marry him tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, what are you going to do? You don't have to do anything, but what do you do, Nadi?
Try to convince once,
Try to convince her, but then
Because you eventually know she's not going to understand. So let her suffer.
If it is me, I tell her, if something happens or like what, I told you,
Yeah.
warned you, should have listened in the first place.
yeah, but that I told you so is not going to be very.
My mom
It's not going to feel good.
done that.
Your mom's done that to you?
She said, I warned you, should have listened.
And you did it anyway?
Yeah.
And did you agree with her? Did you say, "Oh yeah, I should have
I
listened"?
admit that I was being stubborn.
Mm. Sometimes. What do you think? Peter, Adon, what would you do? Daughter wants to marry some sketchy guy?
What age?
What's
I
that?
think, like, at what age?
Well, let's say she's 21.
Whoa.
Okay, so she didn't finish her university, I think.
Yep.
So then I would tell her. I mean, I would explain everything that she shouldn't do it, like not marry,
Uh-huh.
just like relationship. And then if she's like, oh, I will marry you tomorrow, I would tell her that I give you one more chance to reconsider,
Uh-huh.
or else you're on your own.
Ooh. The
I mean-
the ultimatum.
Yeah.
No, would define on your own. Like financially on your own?
I mean, financially, yeah, for sure. Like, she'll be my daughter still.
Yeah.
And then I'm not gonna help her, financially. Like, maybe if she will come back, she will say like, oh no, this guy is betting, on the sports. He will stole his money or something. Then, yeah, for sure, I will, like, she's my daughter. She'll
Okay.
come back. But still, I'm gonna be like, so now you understand me. Like, now you will not do this like things all in front.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm one of those, like, if that's 21 years, then she should consider everything, and if she feels like she's still interested, then say she's on her own, and
Yeah.
she'll be my daughter, but like we'll have the relationship of father and daughter, but like for step by step, I'll not be with her.
Okay.
Something like that.
Interesting. So yeah, it seems like Dunya, what are you thinking? You wouldn't let her?
I at first like talked to her a couple times.
Uh-huh.
Speaking,
Uh-huh.
But then even if she's like not a she's
Yeah.
I would talk to her and then because I'm sure she'll get there. So she'll know I'm if he's actually a sketchy guy.
Yeah.
So I'll give him like a year and then I'll let them talk together.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time I won't help her.
Okay. So at the same time then, if we flip this little scenario around, if you wanted to marry someone and one of your parents came to you and said, "Look, Nadi, I think this guy is not right for you. He's bad news. I think you should reconsider."
I would be
I
Would
think
you?
so.
Okay.
I would stay with them and then let her do or something.
Uh-huh.
Because with my parents, I don't know.
Your parents are
Not wrong.
no.
No. They're saying this for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Nadi, do you
Yeah, I
reconsider?
think we do consider, I would say, because they say something for my good only, so.
Right? Yeah. Peter, what do you think? This girl's bad news, Peter.
I mean,
Run,
I wouldn't marry
run, don't
until-
walk.
I wouldn't marry until I know that I'm financially stable on my own.
Okay.
If in 21 years I don't have a job, or like, I mean, if, and I'm still like living with my parents,
Mhm.
and I'm telling, oh, tomorrow I'm gonna marry, no, that won't work for me for sure. Like, my parents will like tell me, like, saying that I will say to my children, but then, if I really like the girl and I wanted to marry her, then I would keep it like, without marriage. And then like when I know that if my parents say that, oh, okay, you're on your own now, I'll say yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay. So you'd make sure that you're in the position to be independent. So if they don't approve, then you're okay anyway. Okay. Very, very interesting. Okay. Okay. Let's go to Shui Shui. What do we hear about her? Because there's some stuff that comes up around marriage with her and her school friends as well, right? She's at school. She's hanging out, I guess, in the courtyard with some friends of hers and some boys, and they're talking. And what are they talking about?
What if the woman or what, like wife makes more money compared to the husband?
Right. They're having that conversation about if a husband and wife, if the wife makes more money or her career is just kind of bigger and more important than his, what's that like, right? And how do the guys respond?
That they wouldn't like to hear spouse would have more money because they would control.
Right.
Their culture is like
Right. Yeah. They said, yeah, that then she would control me, right? This isn't in our culture. This is not how it's supposed to go, right? The man is supposed to be the person who makes the money, right? And what does that one guy say? He says, yeah, like if I'm not bringing home the money, like what's the purpose of me as a man, right? Like what use am I? Which actually is kind of a little sad to hear, right? Because, is that, in a family, is that all men are good for, right? Are they just a walking paycheck, right? Or are they more, right? Are fathers more than that? Yeah, and again, I would argue that they are more. So it is a little sad to hear, that young man say, "Oh, well, what good am I?" It's like, well, you're probably a lot of good, right? Because that's not the only thing you're kind of bringing to the family. At least I hope not. What else? Oh yeah, what else are they talking about? I'll give you a hint. Moo.
like yeah, like for giving money like to family which you want the girl to
Yep.
marry. Like they say that's the best preference like this. Like because you take daughter from the family
Uh-huh.
and then you have to do something from like part.
Yeah, so in this society, in this part of the world, they have kind of an exchange that goes along with the marriage, right? So the husband's family provides the wife's family with some sort of gift, right? Whether it's money or cows or something else of value, right, is provided to the family. Yeah, well, cows are valuable, right? And traditional. What do you think about this kind of idea? Well, let's pause on that for a second. What does Shui Shui think about that idea? Shui Shui and her friends.
She thinks it's a good idea. She thinks that like daughter from the like they are being compared to money or to cows, because they exchange, so it's like same value thing. As valuable as that.
Yeah, they interpret it like it's almost like she's a commodity, right? That she's being like bought or sold, and her value is, however many cows are provided, right? She's worth, 80 cows or whatever. I don't know what the exchange rate of women to cows is, but yeah, but that's how her and her friends are kind of interpreting this, right? Or they say it feels like I'm being bought. It
Yeah.
feels like I'm being sold, right? What do? Yeah, and one of the other boys says the same thing, right? He kind of says, well, yeah, if I'm giving my daughter to someone else, I need to be compensated, right? Bring me the money, bring me the cows. Right? What do you think about that idea? And Zartaj here suggests, are we talking about dowry? And yeah, in some cases we are, right? In some parts of the world there are exchanges. Sometimes they're called bride price. Sometimes they're called dowry. Sometimes they're called other things. and they go along with the marriage, right? Is that customary in any of your cultures? Kind of an exchange of
It
used to be?
yeah, like now it is there still, but very
Yeah.
so like
From wife's family to husband, or the other way, or both?
so if you're giving the girl with money.
Okay.
Yeah.
So money goes with the girl.
Yeah.
Okay. And why do they say that that happens?
I don't know. They just say that you're giving us the girl, but you also need money. And for me, it doesn't make sense. Like the father also gives the girl, also gives the money.
Yeah.
Now what is left to them?
Right.
Yeah.
Dunya, you have a thought over there. Okay. Is this the husband that has to pay, or the husband's family? The husband has to pay for it. So lots of presents, lots of jewelry, pay for the whole show. Okay. Well. Woo. Wow. And what? Why do you think that is? Why is that? Why is that the way it's done?
It's not like all of this, so it's a little more. It's like more make her happy.
Okay. Can I make her happy in other ways? I'm not a rich man. No?
I mean, like, if you're not rich, then that's fine.
Uh-huh.
You can make her happy in other ways. But if you're like kind of like in the middle,
Yeah.
you don't have to do like a big whole thing. Something that
As
that
big
you can,
as big as you can manage.
yeah,
Okay.
but not that much.
Right.
Like if you're really rich.
But the husband has to sort of provide some sort of financial gifts and pay for the wedding and the whole thing.
Yeah, but like however you have like some parts that are like some other like how do I say it? Other areas
Uh-huh.
they sell the so they're like, oh, these are just money, we don't really need like so it's like different, but
Right.
most of the it's like
Yeah.
not
So sometimes a lot of the kind of, the lovey meaning of it gets removed and just becomes more financial, right?
it depends on the family.
Right. Interesting. I was a little worried when you started saying that, because actually my partner does make more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
My partner makes more than I do, so not by that much, but a little bit. Maybe like let's see. Maybe like 10% more.
Is she?
It's not about like oh like the girl is cool or the guy is rich. No, it's, I don't know, just the wedding thing. That's how it works.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, because these sort of like bride prices or dowries or whatever, Sartaj mentions they're illegal now. But they're, it's funny when, Unadi, I asked you, why do they do that? And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, because like most of them they say you're bringing the girl to a house.
Yeah.
So who will manage the house?
Yeah.
The husband can't manage all the things. That's what they say. They
Well.
ask for money, they ask for gold, they ask for clothes, and the girl.
Yeah.
So
And sometimes like it works differently in different cultures, but like initially in many cultures what it's supposed to be about is, yeah, like if a couple's getting married and the woman is going to go and live with the man and the man's family, which is called patrilocal, by the way, but you don't need to know that. If it's that kind of arrangement, what's kind of happening, if you think about it, is that the wife's team is or the wife's family is kind of losing a member of their team, right? So she's there, she's contributing to the household, she's working or she's helping out, and now they've kind of lost a team member, right? So the groom's family can provide them with money to say, look, We know you're losing a member of your team. We know it's going to, hurt the sort of productivity of the household, and we're going to compensate you for that, right? Sometimes it's viewed the other way, though. Sometimes it's viewed in a situation where, okay, the wife is going to live with the husband, and now the husband's family has to support her, right? And of course, that's in a situation where women can't work, right? So they send money along with her to say, here's some money to help support her, because now, we're bringing someone into this household that we have to support, right? There's an extra person to feed and clothe and all that. So sometimes it goes along with that. And then sometimes it's a way of kind of creating an alliance between families, right? Because marriages are, about uniting two people, but it's also about uniting two families, right? So sometimes the economic exchange helps to create that relationship, right? Because exchanges do that, right? We give people gifts and then they give us a gift back later, and it helps create a relationship, right? And so wedding exchanges kind of do the same thing. But it's very interesting. To see, a custom happening here in Lesotho where, the original meaning is kind of changing, right? Because society is changing, the role of women are changing. They mentioned that young women are more likely to be literate, more likely to go on to advanced education, more likely to get better jobs, right? So everything is changing, but there's still this kind of like leftover custom of the cows, right? And so now the original meaning that it had is kind of gone, right? And these younger women are saying, what is this about, right? Like, are you buying me with cows? Like, what is the point of this, right? And so it's interesting, right? As you have traditions and you have cultural meanings, right? You have these things, and then as society changes, culture has to adapt as well. And so you're almost seeing it happen in real time, right? When they go to talk to Shui Shui's great uncle, and he's saying, if she comes to us, we'll tell her what to do, right? And the guy's like, you're going to tell her what to do? And then Shui Shui's mom steps in, we'll tell her what's supposed to happen, And then a younger woman is like, no, you can't tell her what to do. And so you can see them kind of like renegotiating culture, right? You can see them renegotiating tradition right there, right? As the older generation is saying, nope, this is what we do, this is the tradition. And her mom is saying, well, we'll tell her what the tradition is supposed to be. And younger women are saying, no, you can't tell her what to do. And you can see them kind of working it out, right? And you can see how people's culture kind of changes and evolves as, society changes, the role of women change, and, the meanings of things have to change as well, right? Just like we talked about, in a Western wedding with the father of the bride giving her away, right? Once upon a time, he kind of was giving her away, right? Now, not really, right? Now it's just a sweet thing to do to walk your daughter down the aisle, right? The original meaning of what was going on has kind of been forgotten, right? And now it's just a sweet thing to do. But yeah, you can see these things kind of happening in real time, which is really interesting. Zartaj says here, when a wedding is fixed and it gets called off, it's accepted to be a bad sign for the girl's side, so the guy's side asks for dowry, threatening to call off the marriage. Almost as like sort of a guarantee sort of thing. So almost like a guarantee or a deposit sort of thing. I think I'm not sure how to interpret that. But yeah, it is interesting how these original customs kind of get reimagined, right? And people, either give a new meaning to them, or they kind of forget the meaning and they're like, I don't know why we do this thing, we just do it, right? And sometimes, things get given new meanings as well, right? And so this whole kind of dowry or sort of cow exchange or whatever it's called, actually it had a name, but I missed it. That's something that's kind of people are kind of they're figuring it out again, right? They're trying to figure out what it means and why we do this, right? And it really depends who you ask, right? If you ask her great uncle or her mother or Shui Shui herself, you'll hear different answers about what this custom means, right? Which again is really, really interesting. Okay, I'm sorry, we're all out of time today, but when we come back tomorrow, we'll summarize this. We'll tie it up, and then I'm not sure what I want to do next. I've got a few options. Is there anything, before I let you go, is there anything to do with like sexism or marriage or the role of women or anything like that that you'd like to talk about specifically? Any sort of thing that's like, I'd really like to deal with this issue, whatever it is.
What about religion and all the way of like different cultures, different religions? But I don't know any.
Ooh,
I only know like my
okay. So the role or status of women as religion, as it's concerned with religion.
not specifically women, but just in general, like religion.
Oh, just religion in general? Oh boy, that's a big one. I'm not sure I could kind of fit that into the space that we would need because it's huge, right? It's a huge thing. Yeah, that I don't think I can do. Hey, Kwan. Anything else? Sorry, Dunya. No idea? Okay, I'll try and come up with something interesting. All right, so that's all for today then. Pack it up, go, and I will see you on tomorrow. I'll see you on tomorrow. I'll see you Thursday.
Are we gonna do pumpkin carving?
I don't think so. You can come in, Yo-Yo. It's okay. I don't think so. You're already an expert pumpkin carver.
Morning.
Okay. Hello. Goodbye. Hello. Hello. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.